Hello there. Welcome back to Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me. I'm Alex Pavluk, the host of this niche little podcast, and I'm beyond thrilled to share with you our conversation for today. I had the honor of sitting down with the remarkable Nanette Carter. For an audience who may be unfamiliar with the work of Nanette Carter, she's a visual artist focused in the medium of abstraction. She uses Mylar, which has taken me 3 interviews now, and watching her install the art to fully understand and know what exactly that material is, to create these large, malleable pieces which span walls up to dozens of feet and reach to the ceilings, if not higher in height. She does it all herself too, and has, in my opinion, redefined what the art and practice of collaging is and can be, while presenting abstraction in an innovative and individual way. Before our conversation for this episode, I documented her installing some of these pieces, and she expressed how traditionally we think of collage as a repurposing or artistic lifting of work crafted by others or found in nature, be that photographs, magazine ads, loose fabrics, or whatever. Instead, she paints directly onto the Mylar and uses her own brushstrokes to cut, paste, and build her collages, creating works which, in a lot of ways, despite its abstract nature, evoke emotions and themes of injustice and change among countless other pressing cultural or social concerns. A way that I've learned to view these works are almost like visual essays, which I talk about in this episode, where the words are void and up to you, and as the viewer with your own lived experience, to find the words which speak to the concerns she aims to challenge either directly or unconsciously. I've had the chance to talk to Nanette in a range of capacities, and one thing I've taken away is that she's purposeful in what she creates and why she creates it. I am truly in awe of her both as an artist and as a person. And I'm just so excited for people to see her work on view like it's never been displayed before in her first retrospective here at MAM. So, without further delay, here is that conversation with Nanette Carter. Hi, Nanette.
Hi.
How are you? What's going on?
Alex. Good. Well, we're installing the show.
We are. It's looking really good.
Oh, have you seen it?
Oh, I saw it. I was over yesterday because I never stop filming anything. And so I was filming over in A to Z, which they're installing right now. They were putting on the Sarah Z work was going on.
Oh, yes.
And so we had, Patrick from Sarah Z Studio was here.
Oh, neat.
Helping install. So I was filming some of that. And
neat.
The doors were open and, I got to peek in a little bit. It looks so good.
Yeah.
It's so exciting. How do you feel about it?
Very excited
Yeah.
to have a retrospective. It's really the first one in terms of the number of pieces, too. There are, I think, around 46 works.
I mean, it just keeps going in a lot of ways because you walk in to the elevator lobby, which is what we were filming. There's going to be a video coming about that installation, which, I saw that in the Barry Campbell Gallery. It feels like it's in a whole
very different.
It feels like a whole new. All of the works feel that way.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So you walk through, and I mean, you see the Afro Sentinels in the distance, which are towering. Again, like feels very different, but there's so much that your eye drifts to, and you kind of keep going and it keeps opening, and then you eventually hit your works from when you were high school,
Montclair High School,
Montclair High School,
which is fabulous.
Yeah,
and since that was about 60 years ago, not quite, but anyway,
it's actually
like that.
what's quite. I just kind of put this together on the podcast. I think 2 or 3 episodes ago, we had a young gentleman. His name was Tyler Chan. He graduated Montclair High School in 2020, and he's going to be, I think, in April. Yeah, April. He's having a show in the community gallery downstairs, and so it's going to be kind of interesting that there's two Montclair High School alum are going to be from different generations are going to be displaying at the same time. He's a very talented photographer, documentary photographer.
Okay.
And so a lot of it is his experience at Montclair High. It's called Montclair Snap Memories.
And I was wondering if they still have the dark room there. Again, it was just black and white. It was one larger. But I do remember working in there and having that experience, which was incredible at that time. Yeah.
Now, tell me a little bit. I know, when we first talked, we talked at length about your experience at Montclair Public High School. And I know it was very formative and very, very inspiring, and, really set the tone for your professional career, which I think, I feel like, I know when I went to high school, my parents would always talk about like wood shop and all these things and and we didn't have any. Like, it kind of got, siphoned away over the years, watered down. And, I think in a lot of ways, your access to that kind of hands-on, artistic, professional kind of experience is really tremendous. And I think, at least when I look at your work, is visible that you had that training. And it's important stuff. And I think, what do
you going to Montclair High School, it was so well-rounded because we were doing printmaking, painting. We had ceramics because there was a kiln. We had 2 wheels to do ceramics. I remember doing macrame. I mean, it was just this wonderful, conglomeration of different techniques and different things that one could get involved with. But we were doing printmaking actually back in elementary school. I'll never forget, it was 6th grade at Nishawane, and the professor was able to get the teacher was able to get a tabletop.
I know when I talk about my high school teachers.
She was able to get a tabletop press.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were able to do dry point etchings, which is great because you don't need the acid or anything. You're taking a sharp tool, and usually you're using copper because copper is really fairly soft. And you're just incising into the copper. And then when you ink the plate, you're getting the ink into the recesses, into those lines, those incised lines. You're wiping the plate so that all the ink is going into those lines, and the uppermost part of the plate is clean, so it prints up white.
Yeah.
So you just have that line. We were sending it through the press and in elementary school.
That's incredible.
And we also did linoleum cuts. So, I can tell you there are a group of us that are still making art.
Yeah.
Meredith Gang is a fabulous sculptor. She has work in parks all over the country, including Central Park. And so this was the beginning for all of us. It was a wonderful foundation.
Yeah.
And the fact that, we're still kind of keeping up with each other to see what's going on is exciting also. But what a time we had. Now, in high school, what was incredible was that it was treated as a major class. In other words, we met every day for art. So most people had 4 majors, math, science, history, English, and that was it. And then you had study halls, and maybe you took some minor classes, typing, whatever. For us, we had 5 majors. We took those 4, and then the 5th was the art.
Got it.
We had homework, just like every other class. We had projects we were working on. I remember having critiques. And again, for high school, this was
intensive.
Really, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the 70s. I was in high school in Montclair from, 68 to 72.
Yeah.
What an amazing time also in the country.
I was about to say,
too.
that
There's
is
so much going on.
Right in the sweet spot.
I tell you. So, yeah, the classes weren't terribly large in Montclair, which was also great. So you got almost one-on-one kind of connection with your teachers. I can recall the art classes being maybe about 12 students. And just taken really quite seriously. Of course, I didn't take typing, so I didn't. When I went to college, I had to pay people to type my papers. Everyone else had taken, typing and what have you, but and had no study halls, but enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah, and you got rather than typing, you got the important.
I did.
You got the important stuff.
That's right.
And can you tell me a little bit, for someone who's never seen your work? Maybe this is someone's first time at the museum, first time encountering you as an artist. How would you describe the work? I mean, it's made from mylar, which still puzzles me as a material. I feel like I ask what is mylar every time I see you, because it still baffles me. But it's this large scale abstract work that you are collaging onto the wall. Everything's painted by you. It's really in a lot of ways monumental. And yeah, just how would you describe it?
Yeah, the work is really dealing with just the basics, and that's form, color, texture, and line. But all that you can do with that is just incredible. And of course, each person is going to take the materials and do something different, as well they should. But with my work, I think sometimes some of the shapes do take on kind of biomorphic, almost cartoon-like flavors. You know, there's sort of this bulbous attitude.
Yeah, almost like them. the bubbles in a comic book in a lot of ways.
That's right. Yeah.
The pows and the bams.
And when you think of some of the characters, you know, in comic strips and the way that they're portrayed in terms of their body types, you know. But so, you know, working with these large scale forms and color is very important. I am a colorist, but then I also love working just black and white. There are just so many types of blacks and so many types of whites, you know. They're cool and warm whites, cool and warm blacks. And so working with the grays and all of those grays in between are, I think, are also just as cinematic as my large pieces. I have to tell you, I really like film noir. I love black and white photographs.
Yeah.
There's a warmth that's there. There's a beauty in the simplicity that just does something for my soul. I enjoy it.
It forces you to almost read between the lines, and it makes
You're looking basically at the core element.
Yeah.
It's like again, the shapes.
Exactly, yeah.
The light. And light plays an integral part, of course, in photography and in art. But all of those things are just so poignant and so on. Whereas color, you know, you can get into festive activity kind of with it. You can, with reds and blacks, you can get a sense of danger maybe, or, you know,
well, that
careful.
certainly comes through in the
work. That's the
Afro
Sentinels.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I wanted to speak directly about the Afro Sentinels. They're tremendous. And speaking to the Afro Sentinels, but all of the work, I think I told you this previously, but obviously I'm sure you're not necessarily trying to create things that people are like, oh, that looks like this thing, or that looks like a wave, or whatever. With the Afro Sentinels, they do kind of hearken the imagination to think about weapons of war and stuff. Did you, obviously it's probably a little bit more pointed, pun not intended, but with the Afro Sentinels, but you know, do you try sometimes to pull imagery through your collage, or is that just a happy accident where, you know, someone might say, oh my God, like I was looking at it and staring at it, and then in this little corner I feel like I see, you know, like a face, and does that happen sometimes?
Oh yeah. Oh no, but I think that happens with all abstract work. I think there's always this need, and it's just, you know, it's human to feel. And it's like, you know, looking up. I always talk about looking up at clouds. You know, I would see Bugs Bunny in the clouds, you know, or whoever, you know. And sometimes you would actually get someone else who would see it too, but many times it was just you that was seeing it, which is, you know, great. I mean, one's imagination and all. But yeah, I'm actually really directing the viewer with Afro Sentinels to consider weapons of war. I'm thinking of these Sentinels as my take on Afrofuturism. Because there is also, I think, a feeling of African sculpture that comes across. There are areas that even have an Asian feeling to it. We know that there are masks and sculptures from Africa, it's a huge continent, which are to protect people and families. We know that in the Chinese culture, they've had amazing ceramic, life-size sentinels that are to protect the dead, you know, the emperors and what have you. They were buried with them to protect them. So we have cultures that were always dealing, like gargoyles on buildings in Europe were about making sure that those evil aspects don't enter the building. We see this all through culture, but for me, I wanted to create my own. They're basically very tall, thin. Some seem to be even more delicate than others.
Yeah.
But I just like to say, even though they may appear to be delicate, they have the acumen and they have the force and the, the readiness to protect.
Yeah.
And in this time right now that we're living in, protecting not only Black and brown people, but transgender. I mean, there's just, so many areas of change that we're seeing right now, that we're witnessing, that are really very frightening. So I think that the Sentinels are very timely. I'm thinking of those Haitian people who were living in Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah.
Many of them left that town because they were being really pried on. I mean, it's very frightening when you can't go to school or someone is in front of your home.
Yeah.
So, when you have these kind of things that are happening in our country, a country that's supposed to be about living free and being able to move about and to get one's education and to do better for one's family, to build a legacy for a family.
Took the words out of my mouth. I wanted to ask you about, the work's relationship with history and culture. And, I know we spoke about it the other day in the behind the scenes video a little bit. But do you also, I think that some of your work, I think that the Afro Sentinels, as again, pointed as they are, and, as in conversation with tough to swallow, realities of both our present time and shared history, there's also, I think, and maybe that's through the use of color, exciting, shapes. There's also hope in there. And I think there's also some real, I think it's really, I read this thing the other day called, it was about the notion of radical optimism. Times continue and have always been tough, and there always will be. But, it's almost like looking at the story of like Sisyphus pushing the boulder. Of course, it's going to roll back down, but almost like learning how to live with that and recognize that despite the continuous nature of life, which is sometimes going to beat us up, having that radical optimism is really the resilience. Yeah, is
I can
truly,
tell you, people of color have been resilient the whole time they've been on this planet. It is where, all of man started, was Africa. That's the beginning of man. But, living in this country, Black folks have had to be resilient. And I think it's due to the music. I think it's due to the arts.
Yeah.
Whether you're talking about literature, song, dance, fine art, this is one way that we've been able to create from the pain, but then also create the sense of hope.
Yeah.
And like I said, resilience, and that we're happy to be alive, and we're going to make as much joy as we can. We're going to try, with family, with friends, to have joy in our lives and to have purpose. We've had strong Black communities all through this country that have, been so wrongly dealt with. I'm thinking of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Once we are able to build our own situations, and folks want to tear it down. Now we have our present president talking about, knocking down DEI. But we will continue on. We are resilient people, and we have developed forms in art that are just amazing. We have developed rap, jazz, blues, R&B. We have poets, amazing poets and writers, and we will continue on.
Yeah, and I think the forms of your work kind of resonate like jazz in a lot of ways.
Well, and this thing of balance too.
It helped listening to
balance
some
and
Duke
movement.
While we were in
that's
there,
right.
But yeah,
but
balance
movement
and
is definitely happening in the work.
Yeah.
Shifting perspectives, the work is shifting. It's the sense of movement. I think there's a rhythmical quality to the work. But a lot of the pieces and the works, I would say, at least from the last 20 or more years, have been about balance. And that's why we decided to give the title A Question of Balance, that this is what we're all going through right now, trying to keep this equilibrium, to keep our sanity so that we can move forward. And what I'm hearing now, too, is that a lot of people are talking about work with your communities. Don't think about the federal stuff that's going on. Work with the people who you live next to. Build those communities.
Mutual aid.
Make sure that the schools are strong. And talking about schools, again, Montclair, and I don't know very much about the situation today, but Montclair public schools were fabulous. Okay. And I believe they have been for many years. Absolutely incredible. The arts are still there. I can recall growing up where, sports was still around. There are a lot of schools in New York that don't have art or sports. I mean, for young people.
Even in speaking to New Jersey, I mean, I'm from Ocean County, a very rural community. And our funding has been hit. I mean, there was from K through 12, there was a fear every year that the schools were going to close just because the funding wasn't there and things suffered in that way, we still have sports and stuff and, our general arts classes, but a lot of it is slipping. And I think that is true across the country. And it's scary because I think without a proper arts education, it's just you're missing out. And I think it's that cultural background that you get, whether it's through music class, whether that's through art class, whether that's through a film class. It's vital in high school.
Yeah, I think for young people it is.
I wouldn't be doing the job that I'm doing today without my high school film class. Like right. I made my first documentary, which is now my job, in high school. I consider the work I did in high school more formative than any of the work I did in college because that was all theory. I love the theory. I think the theory is great, but
you were actually producing things and
in high school. Yeah.
But the other thing I just want to say also that even if children don't go into the arts, whether it be music or whatever, art gives you a sense of self. When you're creating work in an art class, you're really extending what are your thoughts and your ideas. And so for other people to look at your work, to comment about your work, there's a real sense of oneself that comes through. I think the possibilities. And again, not everyone's going to be an artist. That's understood. But that release is so important. Whether you're dancing or singing, writing, again, or creating art. For young people, that release is so important. But wanted to go back to this idea of balance. Because in the show, we have several series, and I like to work in series. In fact, my largest series, which was called Slightly Off Keel, different from being off kilter. Off keel is a sailing term. The sailboats have this heavy metal keel at the bottom of the boat that kind of anchors it. So although the boat may tip over, it's not going to go all the way over. So being off keel means that the wind is in your sail, you're moving fast, and you have to really be on your toes. You're not really on your toes, but you've got to know how to work with that boat tilting. But it's good. You're moving at a clip. It's good. So you have to adjust. And so this is the way I was feeling coming into the millennium. This is a series I started in 1997, and that's when I bought my first computer, and it was one of those Apple Bubble computers, the big desktop.
I know the one.
That's right. And I was scared to death. I was an adult.
You didn't take
at the
typing
time.
classes.
I did take typing. Oh dear. Yeah, and I still work with two fingers. But anyway, it was frightening, but I knew that I needed to have it. I needed to keep up. I needed to see what this could do for me in my business. I was teaching at the time. No, 1997. I take that back. No, I was living off the sale of my work. I started teaching at Pratt in 2001. But anyway, 1997, the new millennium was coming on. They were talking about Y2K, where they thought that they weren't going to be able to deal with the clockwork on the banks. The doors won't open because now we're going to go into a digital thing. So it was a fascinating time. And I wanted to do this series that reflected on that we all need to be on board, to be on top of things. And we know that if you're on a boat and you fall off, there are no brakes.
Sink or swim.
When you're sailing, you have to tack and move the sail around and everything to come back around to get the person who's fallen off. So I didn't want to fall off. I had to get this computer. I had to try and keep up. And so that was sort of the metaphor I was using there. And then came cantilevers, which was further down the line there. That was 2009, 2010, because, or maybe it wasn't, something like that. Anyway, it was around the time that, Obama was in office. And I pick a series, and it's usually from what I'm reading or listening to the news. It's usually something where I feel like I'm almost documenting that particular period in time. Oh boy, he was being disrespected by the Republicans, and that's when the Tea Party started. That's where a lot of this horrible, uncivilized talk began. The civility, the lack of civility in Congress was happening. In fact, one of the senators yelled out during his State of the Union speech, "You lie." And for them to be so disrespectful. But, that started it. And it's gone downhill, Children are becoming very anxious. I noticed when I was teaching at Pratt, the anxiety was high as they saw that the government really was not moving forward on climate change necessities.
Yeah.
And so a lot of their work in the classes was dealing with some of these issues and their anxieties. You talk about some young people, families, or young people are marrying and not wanting to have children because they fear for the future of this country. So again, just trying to live through this, maintain one's balance,
yes.
Go forward because, we can make the change. We can make a difference, and I'm sorry that we are where we are, but we've got to move forward. We're on this planet. We've got to try and do the best we can. Yeah, resilience, back to the resilience.
I want to thank you first for sitting down with me to do this episode today. Yeah. This has been a joy. Getting to know you over these past couple months has been a real special treat. I do have one more question before we wrap up, and we kind of touched on it a little bit in the previous conversation, but a lot of this conversation has revolved around your experience as a young person learning art, and then also you just spoke to it now, but teaching at Pratt, seeing what is inspiring young artists. And I guess for a young person walking in, what do you want them to take away from your work? Mm-hmm. What do you want them to see in their work or in your work? Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not an artist in the traditional sense I write, but I really liked how you described the work as a reflection of the current temperature in the room, what's going on in the world. And I, now thinking back on that comment, am for the first time looking at your work a lot differently. Mm-hmm. I look at each of them as almost essays in a strange way, and I think that's fascinating. And I guess I just want to know what you as the artist would want a young person walking into that space to feel and think and see.
So many things.
I know. Tough questions.
One of the things that we haven't talked about is sort of this whole idea of the materiality of the work, and this process of developing your own voice.
Okay, yeah.
So when someone will see my work somewhere else, they'll say, "Oh, that's got to be a Nanette Carter because of this, that, and But this idea too of finding materials and then experimenting with them, finding how far you can push them, how they will work to benefit your themes that you want to promote, project. And then how I'm doing that with these Mylars. And again, Mylar is basically plastic.
Yeah.
And like plastic, they want you to recycle because it's going nowhere. All right. So when I first saw Mylars, and I like to tell the story about going to the Cooper Hewitt Museum, where there was a Frank Lloyd Wright exhibition. As a young person, I saw this Mylar, but I saw that the way that the pencil looked and the color pencil looked on the Mylar was very different. I was inquisitive. I wanted to know, what is this stuff? I hadn't heard the name. 1984, I'm out of college. I'm out of graduate school. I'm a young adult. But I'd never heard of Mylar. And then come to find out that architects had been using this since the late 50s. DuPont, they were the ones that actually created this surface. And the durability of the surface, which is allowing me to then put these massive shapes onto the wall, and using an archival double-sided tape, put them on the wall, and then still be able to tear them off the wall and put them up on another wall. Paper couldn't exist in that kind of framework. You would tear it off, the paper would tear. Canvas, it's going to buckle, it's going to, you need that substrate, you need that,
versatility,
the framework to keep it taut and all of it, And so I have all of that. I have the tautness that I like. I have this surface that's wonderful to work on. I love painting on it. It's a wonderful, smooth sensation when you're working a brush over it. And then I've come up with my own textures that I think are very unique. And even artists, professional artists, want to know, how are you obtaining this? What is this? So I love that. When another artist doesn't know what you're doing, that's great. That's good. But I've made it my own, to make it your own, to find your way.
Well, Nanette, thank you so much for sitting down with me. This was just a real treat and joy.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Absolutely. When and where can people see the show?
Well, the show, I believe, is open to the greater public on the 9th? The 8th it is? Okay, the 8th of February. All right. And I believe the show is up until July 6th.
Gail from the Wings,
Gail
thank
is
you.
helping me out. Thank you, Gail.
But
and I'll be here a couple of weekends. I'm going to try and get a group of folks to come through from Montclair, some old chums.
Lovely.
So, yeah.
That's so fun.
That's good.
Well, again, thank you so much, Nanette. I really do appreciate it. This has been great.
Thanks.
Thank you so much to Nanette Carter for sitting down with me for this episode. On behalf of myself and the entire institution, we really do appreciate getting to, take a stroll through the inner workings of your creative vision. It's truly remarkable. Alas, this was Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me. Again, thank you so much to Nanette Carter, and to our chief curator, Gail Stavitsky, and to our guest curator, Mary Birmingham, for allowing me to have this access to Nanette over the course of the show opening. It's been a real treat. You can follow the museum on Instagram. That's Mam Montclair, M-A-M Montclair on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook, on TikTok, on YouTube. We're all over the place. YouTube, we have a lot of great, really dynamic documentary content and art lessons. You could actually see the video that I referenced in this episode, where Nanette is putting up the artwork and installing the show. You could find that on our YouTube now. You could just search the Montclair Art Museum. But alas, we are open to the public Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of every week. Starting in March, we're going to have Free First Thursdays up and running again. So that's a chance to, if you've never been to MAM before, it's a great opportunity to come check out our galleries for free. And there's food trucks and a bar and live music and performers, art classes for the family. It's a great time. So again, this has been Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me. Please share the show with a friend. Give it a rate and review. All of that really, really means the world. So yeah, thank you so much, and we will talk to you next week. Bye.